What does it look like to be deeply rooted in Christ in a world of cultural chaos? Welcome to the Equip Podcast. I'm Mark Vance, the lead pastor at Cornerstone Church of Ames, and each week we want to look at core biblical truths that will equip you to live a life of faithfulness, to be salt and light wherever Jesus has called you.
Well, welcome back to the Equip Podcast. I'm Emily Jensen, and I am not here with Mark today. I am here with Steve Jones.
Yeah.
So welcome.
Thank you.
Well, I just wanted to introduce you really quick for anyone who's not familiar, because you have a lot of important jobs. I'll be the one to say they are so important. You're not only the executive director of ministries here at Cornerstone, but you're also a licensed mental health counselor, and you are the executive director of Cornerstone Counseling, which is an incredible ministry and resource in our community. And you are here today to talk with us about marriage. You have all the answers about marriage, right?
I have all the answers.
We were joking about that, but actually, you put on an incredible workshop earlier this year in February called The Marriage Experience. And all of that audio is actually available for anyone who wants to catch up and listen. We're going to have the link to that in our show notes. And it's something that you can go through. It's actually like about 4 hours or so of content. I was listening through it. Actually, funny, I wasn't there. I was teaching at a women's conference. So my husband went and he diligently
Way to
took
go,
notes.
Brad.
I know, way to go, Brad. He was with another husband whose wife was also traveling. So they had some good, fun conversations, I think. But I will just say it was really foundational material. It was really instructive. And yet you did enter into some of the hard areas, some of the pinch points of marriage, which hopefully is what we're going to talk a little bit about today. So I wanted to start by just having you set a vision for what a godly marriage looks like, because you mentioned Brad. He's a business guy, he's a metrics guy, and he always says, "Tell me what the definition of done is."
Yeah.
So I know that there is no definition of done in marriage, but what are we aiming for? Give us a portrait of that.
When I hear you use the word godly, that just evokes a lot of different pictures and images in the minds of people. And I think sometimes couples think, well, the godly couple is the couple that reads the Bible together and prays together. And I don't think of it that way. I mean, those things are really important and helpful, but I think more in a macro way. What is the environment? What is the texture? What's the condition of the marital relationship? And really, if we want to think of godly, I think of, what does God want? What is God's purpose? What is God's design for marriage? And even asking that question is sometimes lost in the minds of a lot of people, even in church world. And so I always take people back to the beginning, Genesis 2, what I call the Genesis 2 principle, where if anybody's curious, what is the purpose of marriage? There it is. Genesis 2:18, it's not good for man to be alone. I will make him a helper suitable or helper corresponding, which, as I always say, that doesn't mean someone to help out, a servant or a maid. Of course, it doesn't mean that. Hebrew word there is ezer, and it has a beautiful idea to it, companionship, partnership, and even the idea of friendship. And then you combine that later with the two will become one, and you think, this is my companion and partner, my friend, and we're going to become one, then it's a level of friendship that's unlike any other relationship that we have. So when I think of, a godly couple, I think of a couple where I see two people that have become really, really good partners and have a deep sense of friendship. I don't often hear that, sermons on marriage and things like that. What is the condition of your friendship? I also think of, and I talked about this in the first session of the marriage experience, the theology of God in relationship with us, and what do we experience from God, and what would it be like if we experienced that from each other when we're going for what does a godly marriage look like. And so the 4 words that I talk about, in counseling with couples and even at the marriage experience is covenant, grace, empowerment, and intimacy. Covenant to love and be loved. So a godly couple is where you just see that it's not transactional, it's not conditional.
Right.
you just see that mutual, unconditional love, grace to forgive and be forgiven. They are quick to acknowledge when they've done wrong, and they're quick to forgive. And I often hear, when I'm meeting with couples, I've never heard them say, "I'm sorry," or I've never heard, "I forgive you." And I'm even talking about people that, are in churches and we would consider Christian couples. The third word is empowerment to serve and be served. And it's just the idea of, I want to know who you are as my wife or husband and what God's call and purpose is in your life. And I want to serve that to the fullest, which is what we see Jesus do. The Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. And so I look at a couple and say, wow, that's a godly couple. They're really serving each other, the other person's interest. And all of those things provide the context for true intimacy to know and be known. So when I think of godly, I think of that kind of picture. Not that anybody gets it perfect,
Right.
but the opposite of that would be transactional, where they don't feel like they measure up to their spouse's expectations, where they don't feel like they're each person is just serving their own interests, those kinds of things, and they just feel unknown. And so I don't know if that's what you're asking or if what you're thinking, but that's how I think about godly. And if you read the Bible together and pray together, wow, that only adds fuel to the fire.
Of course. Well, what I love that you're doing is kind of broadening and expanding that definition, because one of the things that you talked about in the marriage experience was that a lot of times couples go to, well, how do we avoid conflict, or how do we resolve some of the pinch points in our marriage? And you're like, whoa, scoot back a little bit. Let's talk about, use the word environment of your marriage. Like, what's the culture of your marriage? What's the tone of your marriage? How are you treating one another? Because those are the things that really embody godliness of how are we partnering together? How are we serving one another? How are we loving one another? And that's just a totally different paradigm shift. Not just like, are we fighting? Are we not fighting? Are we getting along? But like, are we loving each other in Christ-like ways, in this friendship way, partnering way? It's so good.
And even when we're paying attention to the environment and the culture, conflict doesn't feel the same way.
Right.
Because I always make the point, and Dr. Gottman makes this in his research, 70% of conflict is perpetual. So I'm guessing you and Brad have conflict from time to time.
Sometimes, yeah.
All the time.
But I was just telling him this last night. We were talking about this podcast, and I said, I think one of the things that's changed in our marriage is that when we were first married, I wasn't yet fully confident in his love for me.
Right.
Now, that was just because we hadn't been married that long. It wasn't because of anything he did, but there was still sort of this part in my heart that I'm like, I just don't know.
Yeah.
And so I viewed anything he said or did through the lens of, well, does he really love me?
Yes.
Even something as simple as he got home a little bit late. Well, if he really loved me, he would get home right when he said.
Yeah.
And now I have the confidence of years of saying, I do believe he loves me. I do believe he's fully committed to me. So I don't view the things he does through that lens anymore. I view the things he does through the lens of love.
Right.
Not perfectly, but if he were to now get home a little bit late, my first, second, third, fifth thought would not be, well, does he really, if he really loved me? I'm like, oh, what happened in his day? Like, is there a way that I need to come alongside and serve him because there's something tough going on? I'm not even thinking like, but, oh man, he must really have it out for me.
Yes, and so you're just describing environmental, cultural things that you're experiencing, so that the conflict, doesn't feel the way it feels for a lot of couples, who would come in and talk to me and say, we fight all the time, we can never agree on anything. And so, I talk about the Gottman marital house, the 7 floors. Conflict management is the 5th floor. And so you have 4 floors. Where couples, when I start taking them through those floors, building love maps, and that's where you really feel like you know each other really well. And then fondness and admiration, you feel valued by each other. The positive perspective, where you feel, that you have value and you're seen in that way rather than being seen through a negative lens. I mean, all those things are powerful before you even get to, okay, let's talk about this thing that we disagree on. So if you don't feel valued,
Right.
If you don't feel known, you don't feel seen, heard, and known, you feel isolated, you feel lonely in your marriage, and then all of a sudden we got this conflict, and we're going to try to talk to each other about it. And even if you have toxic communication patterns that have already been established, it's just a lost cause.
Yeah, it's almost like if you don't have that environment, then you're just playing whack-a-mole.
Yes.
Trying to deal with this conflict and this conflict and this conflict, but those things are going to keep coming up. If there's this deeper sense that I don't know if I'm valued, I don't know if they're going to be there for me, I don't know if they're going to love me and, take care of me in those ways. So go ahead. Did you have one more thing
I
you
just
wanted to
want
add?
to just come back to, the foundational thing you said. Does he love me? And so that's why we start with covenant.
Okay, yes.
Because often that question comes out of couples, Christian couples, that stand and make their vows, they make a covenant with each other, but it's still, whether consciously or subconsciously, is more like a contract. It's just very, very transactional. Like I want to measure up and all that. So I'm glad that you pointed that out, because that is at the very foundation of what I would consider a gospel-informed marriage.
I love that. Okay, well, I thought it would be fun to go through maybe kind of a frequently asked question corresponding with different seasons of marriage, because we're getting ready to enter into like a new sermon series. Mark's got this great thing planned about seasons of life, and he's going to take us through all these different seasons. So let's talk in terms of seasons.
Okay.
Now, I didn't source these from any specific person, but these are just things I've observed as kind of specific questions that come up. So let's start with kind of thinking about an engaged couple or a newlywed couple. We have the pleasure of having several young couples in our lives, and it does seem like a question that comes up a lot is around in-laws and family of origin and some of those early attempts to integrate two families. And specifically, I guess I've just thought it's interesting because whether or not someone has really godly in-laws, there's still, who's going over to whose house for Easter? And what's the expectation for family vacations? And how frequently are we talking to each other? So what are some of those baseline principles that you give to couples when it comes to engaging with each other's extended family?
Yeah. Great question. And I have done a lot of premarital counseling through the past few decades. And I give a premarital assessment called Focus, and it does assess a lot of big areas, including that one. And most often, that one is very low. There's some flashpoint in there. And usually it's one or two parents that mean well, and, areas where there still might be some enmeshment. And the two big areas often are too connected. And this all ties to how they move forward. But, to overdependence on money and overdependence on emotional needs, those kind of things. And not that we're, I take them to Genesis 2:24, therefore a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife. And so what does leaving mean? How do we leave appropriately? Does that mean we pack up and move to California, leave geographically? It doesn't. Ironically, in ancient Near East culture, often they would build a new room on the interior of the wall of the family complex. And so they're leaving, but still in very close proximity. So it's more of an emotional, relational leaving that's not an abandonment. It's not disengagement. So you're moving away from enmeshed relationships, which aren't healthy anyway. But you're not disengaging. You're finding just balance, just a healthy, integrative kind of relationship. So I start there because with couples, have you left properly? Are you working on that? Because to sort out all of the whose house are we going to go to for Thanksgiving and whose house are we going to for Christmas, all those kind of things, they're really, really hard to have any kind of conversation over if there hasn't been a really, effective attempt to leave. And so the leaving thing is really important. And even the couple, to the best of ability in their early years of marriage, coming up with how do we want to do life together? How do we want to manage our new household? We're a new family. How do we want to manage that? Where do we want to go? What do we want to do? How are we going to organize the classic holiday visit, debacle at times. How are we going to do all that so that they are in agreement on what they're going to do? They're not just catering to one parent or the other. But the other thing that's really important is if there is a problem, with one of the parents where they're just not parenting adult children in the way they ought to.
Yeah.
I usually, have the child, the one who's the child of that parent, be the one to go and have that conversation.
That's
Because
really
what I've
good.
heard is, hey, if you got a problem with my parents, go talk to them. And I'm just like, wait, no, time out. That does not work.
Yeah.
You need to have that conversation. And the classic I give, and this happened a long time ago, so nothing recent, but, this couple came in for like their second or third session in pre-marriage counseling, and she just looked at me and said, I need your help. And I said, what? His mom said she's going to come over every day and clean our house and cook us dinner.
What?
And she said, is that normal? And I looked at him and said, do you think that's normal? And he goes, no. Yeah, but she's done that for me ever since I moved out. And I'm like, yeah, you need to have a conversation with her like right away. And he did. I mean, those are hard conversations, but those are kind of the things that couples have to work out. And it's hard. I mean, I did a crash course here a few years ago on parenting adult children, and it packed out the box because parents want to know, how do I parent my adult children, right? Yeah. So there's conversation on both sides of that's really important.
Right. Yeah, that's really helpful to think about it from both perspectives. And even just as now I'm looking back, I'm going, oh, that's part of why it's so important to know how to honor your parents and talk with them as an adult in a respectful way. Right. Even when you're in college or you're leaving the house or you're a teenager, because there's going to be times where you do have to work through conflict or set some boundaries or clarify some things. You need to know how to do that in an appropriate, honoring adult way, because there's a way to come to your parents and say, hey, we talked as a couple and we've decided that these are our plans for Easter, not that. Is there a different way we can come see you? And then there's a way to talk to them that's like, well, in our family, I'm married now, Mom. Like there's different ways you can approach that.
Yeah, there is. And there's a part that both have to play. So I have adult children, they're getting married or they are married and they still don't want to leave in the appropriate way. Yeah. But then you have the parents that won't let their kids leave, and still there's over-involvement, micromanaging, over-control. So the best scenario is when I can get everyone in the same room and just say, look, this is what it should look like in the Genesis 2:24 idea that God designed a couple to begin their new family, their new household, and that's should be able to operate in, with autonomy, with honor, respect, with autonomy. But that is I almost without exception, something that every young couple is dealing with at some level.
Everybody's got to go through that for sure.
Yeah.
So let's move forward a few years, and think about the married couple now that has young children at home. For years, I was part of a ministry that was for moms. Right. And every time we put out like a question box, without fail, the question would come in some way, shape, or form. What should I expect my husband to be doing in terms of the spiritual leadership and formation of our children? Because I think what we found, at least in the ministry era we were working in, is that moms were really spiritually engaged and inclined and were digging into Bible study, and they were wanting to teach their kids scripture memory, and they're wanting to read the Bible as a family. And their husband was maybe not having a personal quiet time. Maybe he was engaged in taking them to church on Sunday and was all for that, but just seemed like he wasn't really spiritually engaged, and there was a lot of frustration there. And can you just help speak to that? Like, what are you saying to the wives? What do you say to the husbands? What should that look like in those little years?
I have a lot to say about that.
Okay, good. Okay, we got to get a little bit the Cliff Notes version, but let's get a good answer here.
I mean, my first response is Deuteronomy 6. And so we did Bible story time when they were really young. And I think mom and dad should be involved in that.
Right.
I think that should be an expectation. Hey, we got to teach our kids the Bible. I took my boys when they got into elementary and junior high to McDonald's every Thursday. all the way through until the last one graduated, to eat breakfast burritos and read Proverbs. And we called
There's
it
nothing boys want more than to
I
be
know.
taken to McDonald's.
Yes.
I'll tell you that.
And breakfast burritos, they didn't care. I don't think they cared about Proverbs, but they cared about their. We called it Man Jones, and we still have the Man Jones feed going even now, which is really cool. So that stuff is really important. And I think depending on what, mom or wife has in her mind, it can't be overboard.
Right.
But at least some expectation that he's going to be involved and engaged in that part, because that's what we're supposed to do. But I think in the bigger picture, and maybe the more impactful thing is the Deuteronomy 6 idea, that it's not so much in what we say, but what they see in us. So we're talking about it when we walk along, when we sit down, and when we sleep, and when we get up, when we walk along the road, when we lie down. I don't know, something like that. It's just, what do they see in me day in and day out? So it's, to me, spiritual leadership is not just, I have a Bible story time with my kids. Spiritual leadership is being a man of God. It's being a man of character, being a man of integrity, that I'm a truth teller, that, something was in my shopping cart one time coming out of Lowe's, and all the boys looked at it and said, we took all the bags out. You didn't pay for that. And I'm like, let's go back in, guys. Just those moments where they see integrity and honesty, and that's the thing that sticks with them. I mean, they remember breakfast burritos and Proverbs, but what they remember more, what was more impactful, was just what they saw in my life. That's an expectation that a wife should have, that you're going to be a man of God and a man of character and integrity in front of our children. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that is kind of the baseline and the realistic scriptural expectation, because I think sometimes, though, if I'm just speaking to moms and I'm not responsible for speaking to dads, my mindset is, how can you affirm the godly leadership that you do see? So maybe you do have this really specific picture of what I'd really like for my husband to be like Pastor Dad, and he comes in at 6:35 and he's got the Bible open and he gets out a guitar. He doesn't play the guitar, but he's going to learn to play the guitar to sing with our kids and whatever all those things are. And I mean, I think you mentioned this a little bit in the marriage experience of knowing what your spouse's gifts are.
Right.
And, I know in our family, like, of the two of us, I'm the one that is more like inclined to talk about the Bible and dive in deep to a study. And so it's just been interesting to think about the way my husband is even led with his character, with his service. I'm like, he will outserve anyone. I'm like, our kids are seeing that. And sometimes I've been like, I'm the one that like will bring the devotional to, out and be like, hey, let's do this, because I'm just a little bit more inclined that way. Yeah. And that's worked for us.
Yes. And that is such a good point, because I will have that conversation. My husband doesn't do this or this or this. And I'm like, well, is there anything he is doing?
Yeah.
Where your kids are seeing, Jesus in him and seeing him serving and doing whatever, exercising his gift. So all of a sudden there are things that they're seeing. It just doesn't fit this picture that they have. So we just want to make sure, is he doing nothing that's of any kind of spiritual value and influence in your children, or are there things he actually is doing, like you said, that does fit more in the way God has gifted him and the way he's shaped? Paula is a great prayer. I mean, I think I'm a good prayer. I mean, I'm a pastor, but the way she would pray with our kids was just remarkable. And I'm not afraid to say that. I'm not like, well, I was better. I mean, she just excelled and I'm like, oh yeah, we should pray about that. She's already going into prayer with them. And so that's okay. But she would say, if you asked her, was Steve a spiritual leader in your home? She would say yes. And well, how'd you see it? Well, I saw it this way, this way, this way. So I think we at least need to recognize what they are doing well and celebrate that.
100%. And all those, the decisions to say, hey, we are going to prioritize church.
Yes.
We are going to prioritize service. We are going to prioritize these godly things. Like that absolutely is leading a family, even in what kind of activities they're going to do, and so many things there. Well, let's move on to midlife a little bit. Oh boy. I think I'm technically in midlife now. I think I could say I'm in midlife.
I'm not going to ask you your age.
That's okay. I'll tell you. I'm turning 40 very, very soon.
Yeah, you are entering midlife.
Okay. I'm like, well, what is technically midlife now?
Depending on what chart you're looking at.
What chart? Hopefully, I'm not like quite to my midpoint, but Anyway, so for midlife, what are some of those key pressure zones that you see? Maybe circumstances that come into couples' lives. Maybe they've been married for 10, 15, 20 years. They've had some of those good habits. They've had some of those good environments. But, man, there's just things that seem to happen. Something that Brad and I have observed is like, wow, why does it seem like when kids go to college, maybe like in mid-50s, there's kind of this smattering of divorces that pop up. Couples that have been married for a long time, and you just go, what happened in there?
Yes, something didn't happen then. Something was already happening.
Yes. So what are some of those things you see?
Well, I just always say that the two big ones are careers and kids. And if I were going to throw, not that kids starts with a C, well, I could say careers, children, and I would even put church in there.
Okay.
Those are the three things, if you're a church person, a Christian, those are the three things that can start to take priority over your marital relationship. And I'm a strong advocate that nothing is more important than your relationship with your spouse. Because if you want to be a great parent, and when I teach parenting classes or I counsel with parents, I say the very first step in what's a good parent? A good parent is, if you're married, is a great marriage. Because that creates, when you talk about attachment theory and secure base, safe haven, I mean, that's the primary relationship that feels safe and stable is that marital relationship. The two places where divorce happens the most often is years 5 to 7. And then, as you said, when the final child leaves and heads out to college, because that couple, if they have survived and just decided, we're just going to hang in there together for the sake of the kids, then the kids leave, there's nothing.
Yeah.
Because they've not invested in the marriage. There's no friendship. There's not the Genesis 2 companionship and emotional relational bond that God designed them to have. They just have not prioritized it. And that's why I joke, even when I'm teaching the 5 rituals, which is the 4th session of the marriage experience, on that daily connect time.
Right.
If your kids come in and interrupt, kick them out. Go outside. Go climb a tree. Go do something. This is time for mommy and me or daddy and me to be together to work on our marriage. And we always joked with our kids, do you want us to have a good marriage? Yes or no? Yes, daddy. And what we were saying is, you guys are so important. You are our children and we're going to invest in you, but this is more important. So I think if we don't have a great marriage, then we're going to be a lousy parent. We're going to we might even be a lousy worker.
Yeah.
And for sure, we're not going to be any good to the church. And that's why the qualifications for leadership in the church is, how are you doing at home? So I think that there's so many things competing for our attention. And so it's no surprise when couples come in, married 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, I almost always start off with, tell me about your time together, how much time you spend together. And I mean, they're coming in because they might be in semi-crisis, and they're like, we don't spend time together. And you can't have a relationship. You can't nurture it if you're not spending time together. So I think the wake-up call, you're turning 40. Hey, everybody.
Woohoo. I'm ready. Bring it on.
Yes. I mean, even in the marriage experience, I think it was Paul David Tripp that asked the question, how's your friendship? That's not a question that you often hear. Is how there's so many other questions that you hear that are good questions, but how's your friendship?
Not like, how is your calendar synced correctly so that you can get everybody to the practices and things. It's almost interesting, because some of that covenant piece, if that's built well, and you're like, we do love one another, we are there for each other no matter what. We have endured, 10, 15, 20 years of marriage. I don't know, I find you get into this season of life and you're like, yeah we're good. Like, we want to kind of coast on that. I think there's a temptation to say, because I know this person is there for me and loves me and won't leave me, like, that's okay. We can get by without that. And,
But the thing that's masking that is the kids.
The kids, yes.
And all the activity, and we're running crazy, getting them to church activities and school activities and sporting events, and we're doing all this stuff. And so, yeah, the covenant is keeping you together. But, the one statistic that I often see is 70% of men are lonely in the church.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if they're married or single. There's just, and I hear that a lot from married women, Christian women. I feel very lonely. So they're together and they're running around doing stuff. What they're really saying is, I'm not experiencing that emotional relational intimacy with my spouse.
Yeah.
There's not a friendship there.
The piece of the puzzle you've talked about that I think I often forget, and it is my most favorite piece of advice, the thing I remember over and over again, is like, we need to have fun together.
Yes.
We need to laugh. We have lots of times where we're talking about logistics and we're talking about what needs to get done. And we're like pretty actually good at partnering on big life things as well. Mm-hmm. But then when it comes to, do we have fun together? Do we laugh? Do we play? We have to actually schedule that and work hard at that and be creative. But when we do, it's just like life and breath to the relationship.
It is. And I mean, when I, am working with couples, and that's one of the 5 rituals, go on, couples that are doing really well, 10 years married, 20, 30, 40, they never stop dating. Mm-hmm. And they come back, and I say, how was your date? When they come back the next week, and they'll say, it was okay. What'd you do? And I always ask, did you have fun? Well, no, we started talking about some big financial decision. Okay, no.
I've learned not to. That's
it
not
is,
the time.
That's for your State of the Union. This is to go and have some fun together. And fun, I mean, kids need this.
Yeah.
Even when we're doing parenting stuff, your kids don't just need strict, disciplinarian and teaching and all that. They just need nurturing moments. They need hugs. They need to laugh with you. Sometimes I ask parents, when's the last time, your kids saw you laugh? And I'll have parents say, I don't know. And so that there's something missing there. And the same is true in a marriage. And so I'm glad you brought that out, because that just reflects, that's godliness. Fun and laughter, because it just reflects this is a couple that feels really connected to each other and can feel relaxed with each other, can have fun with each other.
That's beautiful. Well, let's move into the later season of life, what maybe I'm calling the sunset season. I don't know. Some people call it empty nesters. Well, I'll ask you what you call it.
Whatever you call it, make it sound really fun and nice, because I'm heading there.
Sunset is nice.
Yeah, I like
beautiful.
that. Yes, I think of the beach.
That's beach vibes.
Yes,
I agree.
Beach vibes.
Okay, so what would you say flourishing looks like in those later decades? I think sometimes you imagine the cute gray-haired couple that are still holding hands walking down the beach. But other times we have pictures, especially in media or culture, of a grouchy couple that's just tolerating each other until death now, and they're spending as much time apart as possible. What can that look like?
Yeah, not to sound like I'm beating the same drum, but it should be a continuation and an even greater sense of companionship. I mean, I know people, in that older generation, and I'm not including myself in that yet, but I'm getting there. They just, you can tell, they are just tied together in a healthy way, not in an enmeshed way. They literally love being together. Uh-huh. I've got an older couple that I know that said, we just love being together. And again, the word friendship, they have learned how to move toward the Genesis 2 idea of ezer, of companionship and partnership. They've lived it for decades, and it just keeps getting better and better. And Paula and I, we would say we have had friendship from day one, but there's no way to describe it. As you get older, it's better. It's you just feel so comfortable with each other. You feel so relaxed with each other. There's no pretense. There's no earning one another's approval. It doesn't mean it's conflict free, but conflict, it's just so easy to manage. So I just envision an older couple just continuing to grow even deeper and deeper in the idea of partnership and friendship. And you see it, and they are holding hands. They are sitting close to each other. They're walking on a beach or sitting in chairs on the beach. Mm-hmm. they love being together. And I think that is possible because that's what God designed marriage to be.
Oh, so beautiful. I think it's so much to look forward to.
Right.
It's definitely not something we have to dread if there are investments made, that deep friendship and partnership made. And I think just even as we close here and look across the New Testament, so many letters, so many times Christians are told to honor marriage. When you see instructions given of what does godliness look like, what kind of things are you going to do to adorn the gospel, marriage is right up there, and instructions about how to be faithful in marriage. Like you mentioned, this is the qualification for being an elder, for being a pastor, is what are you like at home? And so every once in a while, I think when we get sort of tempted to be complacent about this, we need to just be shaken awake. If this is a very serious aspect of our witness, and I'm just so grateful for the ways that you pour wisdom into couples and encourage them to invest in their marriage.
Yeah.
Do you have any final quick word of encouragement, especially for someone listening who is ready to kind of put in this work, but their spouse is kind of disengaged or content with the way things are?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of people are experiencing. I mean, they're getting excited about, even discovering the gospel and starting to hear and understand what their marriage can really be. And like you said, their spouse is not entering into that with them. And, it could sound cliche, but, we obviously just want to start with prayer and just really pray that, God would do what only God can do. God does what no counselor can do, no pastor can do, no friend group can do. God has to bring that breakthrough in that person's life. I think the other thing that's really important and instructive that I bring out a lot is the 1 Peter 3 idea.
Yeah.
And that's, in that context, you had first century wives coming to faith in Christ and getting all excited, and their husband didn't.
Yeah.
And so apparently they were, we don't see the word nag in there, but I think they out of good intention were just really, really trying to get those husbands to come in. And Peter has to say, don't try to win them over that way, not with your words, but win them over by your behavior. And that's hard to do, especially when you're trying to practice covenant, grace, empowerment, and intimacy one way, which is what God does with us, if we're going to think about it. But I think it's just continuing to move toward that spouse in a way that would be God-honoring and really be something that would say, something has changed in me, and maybe we enter this journey together, and just pray that God brings the right voices in your life. And I've seen that happen. I just, not always, but I've seen it start with a wife and sometimes even start with a husband and that just wants to really get help, and then the spouse starts to see something, and then all of a sudden they're showing up at my office, and God can do something really powerful. And I think that's the hope, even if a couple is like, man, I don't know if we have friendship. I don't know if we have partnership. That I've worked with couples in their 70s that were kind of in that sunset and just didn't have anything and just started to do the things that can nurture that we talked about in the marriage experience, and just started doing those things and did the work and just saw God do something new and fresh and in their relationship. So it's never too late.
Never too late. I love that you've given us just so much hope because there is redemption possible.
Yes.
There's growth possible, and just so beautiful. So thanks for being with us, Steve.
Yes.
Again, if someone's wanting to dive deeper, they can find all the marriage experience material in the show notes. And if someone is hearing this and they're wanting, some more help for something more significant, I assume they can reach out to you or to the Cornerstone Counseling Center. And
if we don't have, we're always, have a wait right now.
Sure.
But we do our best to try to either get people in as quickly as we can, and we have other places that we have confidence in that we refer people to. We just want to give people the help they need, the resources they need. So, they should just reach out.
All right. Well, thanks, Steve.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.